Hey guys, welcome back to the Growing Intuitive Eaters podcast. I am so excited to be back after this little hiatus that we've had over the past few months. So in today's episode, I'm going to give you a life update. I am pregnant with baby number 3, so I'm going to give you a pregnancy update, tell you about all the things that I've been struggling with, things that have been helping. I'll give you a particular focus on the nutrition piece of things, the mental health piece of things, the parenting side of things. That's what this episode is about. If we are meeting for the first time, my name is Dr. Taylor Arnold. I'm a nutrition PhD, a pediatric dietitian, and mom of 2, soon to be 3. And my mission is to help parents teach their kids how to have a healthy relationship with food. So let's get into the pregnancy recap. So this is baby number 3 for me. We're going to be adding to the chaos of our family. Chaos is a good way to describe it, but it's fun chaos. My kids are all going to be about 2 years apart. So my daughter's almost 2 and my daughter's almost 4 and my son is almost 2. So these kids are each going to be about 2 years apart. So I'm 30 weeks pregnant tomorrow. I am just barely into the 3rd trimester. I've got about 10 weeks to go. Hopefully I don't go over. I didn't go over for either of my kids. So hopefully I'll be around my due date, or maybe I won't complain about a week or 2 early. But my first trimester was rough. This has been by far the hardest pregnancy of both babies. And the thing that I have struggled most with, at least in the first trimester, was my mental health. I have talked a little bit about this on Instagram, but I haven't really talked about it here on YouTube or on the podcast. So I have OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, and I have known that I've had OCD since I was a kid, but I wasn't diagnosed until recently during this pregnancy when things got really stressful and difficult. And I finally reached out to a therapist to work with for my obsessive compulsive disorder. I have worked with a therapist before. During my last pregnancy, I had a lot of anxiety around like COVID and delivering in the hospitals, and would my husband be able to deliver with me and all of that sort of thing, because he was delivered in the peak of COVID in 2020. So that was interesting. But we never really touched on my OCD much. She never really asked me about it, which should have been a red flag for me, but I didn't know at the time. So one of the biggest struggles for me with my OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, is emetophobia. And what that is a fear of vomiting. So phobia is fear, and emetophobia means fear of vomit. I have struggled with emetophobia since I was a kid, and my first pregnancy didn't have a ton of nausea. Second pregnancy, I had a little bit of nausea, but it was well managed by Unisom and vitamin B6. So backtrack. My first pregnancy, I could manage the nausea great with ginger ale. I took ginger Altoid mints. I found those to be the strongest tasting ginger mints that you can find, the Altoid brands. And so my nausea was managed very well with the ginger Altoids, ginger ale, and vitamin B6 alone. Second pregnancy, my nausea got a little worse, and that was well managed by B6 plus Unisom upon recommendation from my OBGYN, and that was managed fine and didn't need a prescription. But whoa, this third pregnancy, holy cow, the nausea hit so early. I was convinced I was having twins, and so was my best friend, because it was before I was even 4 weeks, I had the faintest line on the pregnancy test, and immediately I was nauseous. And it was horrible. It was all day nausea. And then on top of that, I had extreme anxiety every time I would feel nauseous, which is all the time. And I just felt completely incapacitated. I could not do anything but think and stress about the nausea and just try everything that I could think of to make it go away. So at one point, I brought it up to my doctor, and I told her how much I was struggling with this. I told her I'd been I think I have OCD, and I have this huge fear of vomit, which she knew I had a fear of vomit from the other labor and deliveries, because I told her that ahead of time to just be aware that I have a lot of anxiety around that. And she told me something that I will never forget, and that I want to tell everybody else who's listening, and that is, you don't have to struggle and be miserable. When we have therapies, we know that can help you with that. And I don't know why. It just made like a light bulb go off in my head, like, oh, yeah. Why am I like resisting medication when I know there's several safe options for me? So, some moms may need like a mental health medication. For me, I needed an anti-nausea medication. I took two different anti-nausea medications. My doctor prescribed me Zofran and promethazine, and I took those in combination. We talked about the risk and the benefit for me. So, the risk of not taking it would be I'm not eating, I'm not getting any nutrition in, I am having insane amounts of stress, which we know stress affects baby negatively in utero, versus if I take these medications, I can feel so much better. I can be a better parent to my kids who are already here earthside. I can be a better wife to my husband. I can function at work. My content output on YouTube, on the podcast, on all my social media channels plummeted or stopped because I just couldn't do anything but be stressed about the nausea. And then once I had my nausea medication, I started coming out of my funk. I mean, it was crazy how much of a difference it made. So I started on the nausea medication, and then I also reached out to a therapist because my anxiety was so intense and so extreme. And I worked with her, and she diagnosed me with obsessive compulsive disorder. Anyways, you can like hear me breathing sighs of relief as I'm talking to you about this, because like I was just really struggling, and going to therapy and talking to my doctor and having a medication prescribed to me helped so much. And I recently posted about dealing with emetophobia during pregnancy on my Instagram page, and I got so many DMs saying like, oh my gosh, I've never heard anybody talk about this. I didn't know this was what it's called, but I've struggled with this my whole life. Like, I've had people tell me that they were crying watching my reel because of how much it made them feel seen, like they're not alone. And I'm still dealing with it a little bit. I get nausea like here and there, but it's not nearly as bad. It's like totally 100% manageable. My therapy has helped a lot with that as well. I do still I'm terrified of my kids throwing up, but I'm working on that too. It's one thing at a time. So I was diagnosed with OCD during pregnancy. I have struggled with emetophobia. Both of those are managed really well, but first trimester was so rough. Oh my gosh. I am dealing with symphysis pubic dysfunction, which I know a lot of people deal with during pregnancy, which is where you have your big old pelvic girdle, your pelvic bones, and right in the front of your pelvis is a cartilaginous joint, and that cartilage gets stretched, it gets shifted, it gets pulled as you're growing and changing, and your hips are shifting during pregnancy, and it can get inflamed. And I have struggled with hip problems ever since high school when I broke my hip. I broke my hip in soccer junior year of high school, and so I've always had hip issues. Each pregnancy it's gotten worse, and my symphysis pubic dysfunction has gotten so bad at this point. I'm like only 30 weeks and I'm limping all the time. I have gone to a physical therapist, and she has been wonderful, giving me so many exercises that I can tell are definitely helping. So I'm navigating that, but it doesn't feel like as much of a challenge because there's so many resources, so many really awesome Instagram accounts from pelvic floor physical therapists who educate on these topics. So while SPD sucks, I feel like there's a ton of resources out there to help with that. So I don't feel as overwhelmed with that as I do with the OCD and emetophobia, or as I did with the OCD and emetophobia thing. So those are kind of the major things that I've been dealing with. Other couple blips that I've had, I did fail my 1 hour gestational diabetes screen. I hate the term fail because you're not a failure if your lab values are different from normal. But I did not have normal lab values on my 1 hour gestational diabetes screen, but in the 3 hour gestational diabetes screen, the lab values were completely normal. So I don't have gestational diabetes. That was a really stressful week though, going down all the PubMed researching rabbit holes on gestational diabetes, but don't have gestational diabetes, and babies also breech right now. So I know, I have a lot of time for baby to turn. I've been talking with my physical therapist. We've been doing looking at some spinning babies things. And so I'm not really stressed about that at this point. I know that I have a great medical team to support me if baby didn't turn, but I'm fingers crossed that they will turn. And I know the likelihood of them turning is still really high because I'm still pretty early. I feel like I started off with a negative a lot of the pregnancy because it was so rough, but I love my belly. With my daughter, my first baby, I loved being pregnant. I was like one of those people that loved being pregnant. I really struggled at the end when I was just so huge and uncomfortable. But overall, I really enjoyed being a pregnant person. And I feel like it's kind of less so this time, but I am trying to feel the magic because this is most likely our last baby. But it's hard when you're running after 2 kids. So, at one point, I was that pregnant person that felt like it was all just magical. Don't feel like that anymore. But that's okay. You can love your kids and you can want a baby and not love being pregnant. And that's okay. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't love being pregnant. I don't really want to be pregnant again, but I am very thankful for this little one and I can't wait to meet them. What else? Oh, a fun thing. My food cravings have been milkshakes and popcorn. Popcorn has been consistent through all 3 babies, but milkshakes has been new for this one, especially a fast food milkshake, like In-N-Out Burger, or Chick-fil-A, or Five Guys. Those are kind of the milkshakes that I'm craving because those are all around my house. So I see the restaurants all the time and I always really want to go in and get a milkshake. As far as birth plans go, I'm planning on a vaginal birth. I'm planning on breastfeeding the baby, but we'll take it as it comes. It's not totally up to me. So I can wish for everything all I want, but every baby has their own path and every, parent, child, dyad has their own path. And so we will see where that path takes me. Some reframes, mental reframes that have been really helpful for me this pregnancy. I want to share 3 of them. Especially with my mental health journey I've been dealing with at the beginning of my pregnancy. So I'm going to share those here. 1, you don't have to struggle if there are safe medical interventions available to you. And you can evaluate whether or not you want to utilize those medical interventions, using a pro-cons list with your medical provider. Being miserable and being stressed all the time is a con. That has negative effects on you and on the baby, and that should be taken into consideration when you're making your medical decisions. That just really helped me decide on taking nausea medication because there's a stigma against taking medication in pregnancy, and it's important. Mom's mental health is so important for the health of the baby, and I just needed someone to tell me that. So if you need someone to tell you that, here I am doing that right now. Number 2, it's okay to do less. You're growing an entire human. You might feel disgusting and nauseous. You might feel exhausted. You might, have limited emotional capabilities. And if you need to tone down what you're doing in your work life, in your personal life, that's okay. Pregnancy is not going to last forever. It's only a brief part of your life, and then it will be over, and you can readjust at that point. So it's okay to do less. That really helped me. I know other people have told me that, but that reframe, when I finally accepted and told myself that was the point when I started to believe it. You can only believe something so much when somebody else tells you, but when you tell yourself, that makes a big difference. And last reframe that was so helpful to me was, my therapist told me this, so I'm going to share this with you because I thought it was awesome. So part of my OCD is negative self-talk. Like, I feel really bad when I don't get my whole to-do list done, even if it's a completely impractical and unrealistic to-do list. And so she told me, instead of focusing on all the things that you didn't get done at the end of the day, to look back and reflect on all the things that you did get done. So she suggested making a to-done list. So at the end of the day, sitting down and writing down all the things that I accomplished. And that really helped. You know, that doesn't just apply to pregnant people. It can apply to any parent or anybody, really. So there's my pregnancy recap. I've been wanting to film one for a while. I'm not a pro at vlogging, so I kind of worry that I just word vomited a bunch of stuff. But if anything that I shared was helpful for you, please like this video, share it with a friend. If you didn't like it, I guess give the video a thumbs down, because that'll tell me what you don't like on my channel, and that'll help me learn too. If you want to learn more about how to help your kids develop a healthy relationship with food, if you want free courses about pediatric nutrition, like full, complete free courses with downloads created by an expert, and you want access to those anytime for $0, then you need to subscribe to my channel. So make sure you click and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.